I want you to think about a moment that happened recently. Maybe last week, maybe last month, maybe it was yesterday. Something happened and your reaction surprised even you. It was too big for the moment, too raw, too fast. You snapped at someone you love. You shut down in a conversation that should have been easy. You sat in your car and cried, and you could not even explain exactly why, or you went completely numb and just checked out. And afterward, when the dust settled, you told yourself the same thing you always do. I do not know why I react like that. I need to do better. What is wrong with me? But what if nothing is wrong with you? What if the reaction that embarrassed you, that confused you, that you have been apologizing for your whole life, was never about you being broken? What if it was a message from someone much younger, someone who never got to finish speaking? Someone who is still inside you, still waiting, still holding something that was too heavy for a child to carry alone. I have been sitting with this topic for a long time, not just as a concept. Not just as something I read in a book or heard in a therapy session, but as something I have had to face personally. The uncomfortable realization that some of the most painful patterns in my life, the way I chased love, the way I feared disappointment, the way I sometimes made myself small so that no one would have a reason to leave, none of that was adult behavior. It was childhood survival dressed up in adult clothing, and today I want to sit with you in that. I want us to go there together. Because I believe that some of what you're carrying right now, the anxiety, the people-pleasing, the numbness, the hunger for validation that never feels like enough, has a younger address. And you will not be free until you go back and meet that version of yourself with the compassion they never received. This is the child you were still lives here, and we are going all the way in. Welcome to Ife Random Reflections. I am so glad you are here. This is the space where we slow down, get honest, and go deep into the things that actually matter for your healing, your faith, and your becoming. I am Ife, and whether this is your first episode or your 50th, I want you to know this space was built for you. Before we go in, if you're listening on Spotify, please follow this podcast. It is free, and it means these conversations keep finding you when you need them most. Share this episode with someone in your world who you know is carrying something heavy. You may not even need to explain it, just send it. Let the conversation do what words between you two cannot do yet, and if you leave a rating and review, it helps more people find this space. Now let us start at the beginning. What is the inner child? Because I know for some of you, the phrase sounds almost too soft, too therapeutic, maybe even a little uncomfortable. And I want to hold that with you because I felt the same way the first time I really encountered this concept. The inner child is not a cute metaphor. It is not a personality quiz result. It is not something only people with dramatic childhoods need to think about. The inner child is essentially the emotional record of your earliest years of life. It is the version of you that existed before you learned to manage, perform, suppress, or explain your failings. It is the part of you that first decided what love meant, what safety felt like, what you had to do to belong, and what happened when you got those things wrong. Here is what psychology tells us and what lived experience confirms. Between birth and approximately age 7, the human brain is in a predominantly theta wave state. That is the same brainwave state that adults experience during deep meditation or hypnosis. What that means practically is that children in those years are not critically thinking, they are absorbing. Every experience, every interaction, every moment of warmth or neglect or confusion goes in without a filter, without analysis, without context. So when a 3-year-old is told to stop crying and toughen up, they do not think my caregiver is emotionally limited, and this reflects their own unhealed wounds. They think my emotions are a problem. I am a problem. When a 5-year-old watches their parents fight constantly, they do not think this marriage is in trouble. They think something I did made this happen. If I am quieter, better, smaller, more helpful, maybe it will stop. When a 7-year-old is told they are too sensitive, too loud, too much, they do not think that adult is projecting. They think I need to change who I am to be lovable. These are not conscious decisions. They are conclusions drawn by a developing mind that was doing its absolute best with what it had. And those conclusions become the operating system. They become the lens through which everything else in your life gets interpreted. The way you do relationships, the way you respond to conflict, the way you treat yourself when you fail, the way you receive love when it comes. This is why inner child healing matters, not because the past defines you, but because unexamined, it quietly runs you. There is something I believe deeply from a faith perspective, and I want to bring it in here because I think it is important. Psalm 139 says you are fearfully and wonderfully made. God did not create you broken, He created you whole. But we live in a broken world with imperfect people, and somewhere along the line, that wholeness got interrupted. Inner child healing is not about blaming anyone. It is about acknowledging what happened, grieving it honestly, and allowing God and your own conscious love to restore what was disrupted. It is not weakness. It is stewardship of the soul He gave you. Now I want to talk about the signs, because this is where things get real, and I want to ask you to stay open, not defensive. Not scanning yourself to determine whether you qualify as wounded enough, just open. The first sign is that you are a chronic people pleaser, not the polite, considerate kind of people pleasing. The kind that costs you, the kind where you say yes when every part of you is screaming no, where you absorb someone else's bad mood as though it is your responsibility to fix it. Where you monitor how people are feeling around you with an almost exhausting level of vigilance, because somewhere, very early, you learned that other people's emotional states were your job. That if someone was unhappy and you were present, it was probably your fault and it was definitely your responsibility to correct it. That is not a character flaw. That is a child who learned that their safety depended on managing everyone else. The second sign is a deep fear of abandonment, not a casual preference for consistency in relationships, a terror. A kind of low-grade panic that lives just beneath the surface of even your most stable connections. You over-explain to prevent people from leaving. You make yourself indispensable so no one has a reason to go. You minimize your needs so you do not become a burden. You hold back vulnerability because the moment someone truly sees you, you are afraid of what they will decide. And sometimes you sabotage relationships before they can hurt you because at least that way you are in control of the ending. The child underneath that behavior was left, maybe physically. Maybe emotionally, maybe they were not physically abandoned, but they asked for connection and got distance instead, and they have been bracing for the goodbye ever since. The third sign is a complicated relationship with your own emotions. You either feel everything too intensely and it overwhelms you and the people around you, or you feel almost nothing and you have this ability to shut down so completely that people wonder if anything touches you. Both of these are adaptations. The person who floods is carrying feelings that were never allowed a safe container. The person who goes numb learned very early that feeling was dangerous. Neither of them is wrong. Both of them are working with the tools they were given. The fourth sign is shame that does not make rational sense. Not guilt, which is I did something wrong. Shame, which is I am something wrong. This is the inner child who was not separated from their mistakes, who was called stupid rather than told that the answer was incorrect, who was made to feel like a burden rather than simply told that now was not a good time, who internalized the message that their very existence was inconvenient. Shame of that kind lives deep and it whispers at the strangest moments, when you receive a compliment and immediately deflect it, when someone loves you well and you wait for the catch. When you succeed at something, and instead of celebrating, you immediately look for evidence that it will not last. The fifth sign is perfectionism driven by anxiety rather than passion. There is a version of high standards that comes from love, from genuine investment in your craft and your growth, and there is a version that comes from fear. The fear that if you are not excellent, you will not be loved, that if you make a mistake, you will be rejected. That rest is dangerous because only your performance keeps you valuable. That version of perfectionism is exhausting because there is no finish line. No amount of achievement ever quiets the fear underneath it. And the child at the root of it is still trying to earn something that should have been given freely. The sixth sign is difficulty receiving love, receiving help, receiving rest. Receiving good things without bracing for the moment they are taken away. This is the child who learned that good things come with conditions, that affection is transactional. That when someone is being kind, there is something they need from you, and so you never fully land in the good things. You hover just above them, grateful but tense, waiting for the bill to arrive. I want to pause here and just say this. If you recognized yourself in any of those, if you found yourself exhaling slowly or getting a little still inside, that recognition is not a reason to feel shame. It is an invitation, an opening. The fact that you can see it means you are already further along than you know. So now we get to the part that I think matters most. not just the diagnosis but the path. Because awareness without a way forward is just pain with a label. You cannot heal what you are still performing for. One of the greatest barriers to inner child work is the performance of healing. Talking about it without actually going into it, sharing the language without doing the excavation. Healing is not a content series, it is not an Instagram caption. It is an internal journey that sometimes requires you to sit in silence with yourself and feel what you have been running from. So the first step is simply this: be willing to stop running. The second step is getting curious about your reactions, not correcting them, not managing them, getting curious about them. The next time you feel that disproportionate emotion, that too big reaction to something too small, instead of immediately shutting it down, try asking, how old does this feel? Because often the answer that comes back is not 32 or 27, it is 7 or 5 or 9, and that information is sacred. It tells you where to go. There is a practice I want to share with you, and I want you to try it this week, not just think about it. Find a photograph of yourself as a child. If you do not have one, just close your eyes and imagine yourself at around age 7 or 8. Really see that child, look at their face, and then write them a letter, not a polished letter. A real one. Tell them what you now know that they did not know then. Tell them that what happened was not their fault. Tell them that they were not too much, that they were not a burden. That their feelings were valid, that they deserved more gentleness than they received. Write the things you needed someone to say to you then. This is not a cute exercise, this is reparenting. You are giving your nervous system an experience it never had. You are creating a new emotional memory, and research in neuroscience actually supports this. The brain does not fully distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one at the level of emotional processing. When you write that letter with genuine care, something in your body receives it. The third step is identifying your patterns and tracing them backwards. Think of your most consistent adult struggles. The relationship patterns you keep repeating, the emotional responses that keep derailing you, the self-sabotage that shows up right when things are going well. Now ask yourself honestly, where did I first learn this? Not to assign blame, but to understand the origin. Because when you can see the root, the behavior stops feeling like a mystery. It stops feeling like something is wrong with you and starts feeling like a logical response to an early experience. And a logical response can be worked with, a mystery cannot. The fourth step is learning to comfort yourself the way a good parent would. This is the actual work of reparenting. When you are spiraling in anxiety, when the shame voice is loud, when you have made a mistake and your inner critic is brutal, try pausing and asking, what would I say to a child who is feeling exactly this right now? You would not call a frightened child dramatic. You would not tell a child who failed a test that they are worthless. You would hold them, you would speak gently. You would help them feel safe before you help them move forward. That is what your inner child needs from you, that same tenderness, that same patience. And the fifth step, and this is one I hold with great conviction, bring God into this room. Do not leave your faith outside the door when you do this work. Because I believe the God who formed you knew every wound before it happened. He saw that child, he grieved what was done and left undone, and he is not asking you to heal in your own strength. He is asking you to come, to bring what is broken, to allow his love to go into the places that human love failed to reach. This is not soft Christianity, this is the actual gospel. The restoration of what was lost, the redemption of what was broken, the love that casts out fear, and healing your inner child is one of the most profound acts of cooperation with that love. I want to leave you with something I hope you carry for a long time. The child you were was doing the best they could with what they had in the environment they were in. They were not weak. They were not defective. They were small and they were navigating things that even some adults could not have handled. And they survived. They survived well enough to become you. Someone sitting here right now, willing to look inward, willing to feel something real, willing to do the work. That child deserves your compassion, not your judgment, not your impatience. Not your performance. They deserve your time, your gentleness, your willingness to finally say, I see you, I am here. You do not have to keep protecting me. I am the adult now, and I have got us. That is the beginning, not the arrival, just the beginning, and the beginning is enough. If today's episode reached something inside you, please share it. Not because it helps the podcast numbers, although it does, but because someone in your world is walking around with a wound they do not have language for yet. And this episode might be the language they needed. Follow this podcast on Spotify, leave a review, and come back next week because we are going to keep going deeper. I am Ife. And I will see you in the next one.